Okay, so let's get started. Um, my name is Lev Blinder. I made Aliyah with my family in 2002 from New York to Bet Shemesh. I may have decent English, but I've been here since I'm 5 years old, so forgive me for that. Over the years, I've done Israeli real estate for a nice amount of years already, and I've learned how buyers from abroad really need a lot more help than Israeli buyers. And at IL 360, I started IL 360 to be able to bridge that gap, to be able to help buyers buy comfortably in Israel, have all the knowledge they need, and bridge the gap, bridge the gap between the foreign to Israeli markets, to give our clients a 360 package of all their needs in Israel, to give good service and everything. So, and that note, I also would like to introduce my good friend Yair Hinden. Yair Hinden has joined the team recently and has been helping a lot with our clients from abroad. He himself will introduce himself in a second, but a very, very special person that has been doing a lot for the community over the years and also has been doing a lot for Olim. So, Yair, go ahead.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Lev. So as Lev said, I just joined up with the IL 360 team a number of months ago. I have been doing real estate. I was a rabbi and was in chinuch for many years in America, in the tri-state area, and then transitioned to real estate, which is part of what allowed for Aliyah. But over the past year and a half, as the war has been going on, and even before, thinking of ways to connect to the Israeli real estate scene here and also be more involved in Aliyah, and particularly the ideas and experience of Aliyah in terms of helping as much as I can. So it's been fantastic working with Lev and with the team at IL 360. And I guess, Lev, I could just for a moment maybe just frame the evening. Is that okay?
Go for it.
All right, so I'll jump right in. So I want to just share one thought as we begin an evening that will have a lot of technicalities and be involved in purchasing real estate, which it's technical in America and anywhere in the world, but Israel as well. But I think to hopefully frame it in a way that I think it should be framed. So we had some water penetration, water issues in our house, and it was coming from our neighbor that lives on top of us. We have a neighbor on top and to the side. So the gina, the garden of the neighbor on top of us, was leaking. We went through a number of contractors and finally settled on this wonderful guy, Johnny, very Israeli in some respects, but from Brooklyn originally, Brooklyn, New York. And he was supposed to begin doing the itum, the waterproofing, right after the Chagim of this past year, a number of months ago. And he was called up to reserves, and that obviously was put on hold. And 1 month, 2 months went by, and finally he calls me one day. I'm coming out of the army, and I need a week to get my team together, and I'm going to begin addressing the water issues. I said, no problem. We were just in Lebanon, 100%. And he took that week. And at the end of that first week, he called me and said, I need another week. So at that point, I started to get a little bit concerned that maybe he was going to, he was pulling the classic contractor move, taking on too many jobs, and was going to kind of let this, continue not being addressed for some amount of time. Sure enough, I was proven incorrect. He shows up and he began work the second week after getting out of the army. So I went up to my neighbor, again, neighbor on top of me. I went up to talk with him about the scope of the work and what he was going to do. And he told me, he said, yeah, I apologize that I needed the extra week, but it was, being in Lebanon was incredibly challenging. And he told me the following powerful story. He said that he was up in Lebanon, and a friend of his, Yedida Bloch, who, Zichrono Levracha, perhaps you saw his name again there, sadly, tragically many names in the news, but he said his friend, Yedidia Zichrono Levracha, was ahead of him, entered a house in Lebanon, and there was an ambush there, and he was shot in the head. And Johnny, the contractor, pulled him out of the house and worked with him, gave him life-saving medical attention, and then the chovesh, the medic, came, and he lived for 5 days, but tragically after that succumbed to his wounds. And he told me that not only was it very powerful, that experience alone, which is just, for me, unimaginable, and I think for many, but his wife was pregnant with their first child, at the time, which after speaking to Johnny, she gave birth, thank God, to a healthy baby boy, and they called the baby boy Ori, not Yedidya as people thought, because I think they felt that was too painful to have that reminder. But Ori, connecting to the light and meaning of his father, who he never met, never will meet. So I'm standing up there, and then immediately the conversation changed to talking about itum, waterproofing, what drains he was going to use and where he was going to put the drains and what block he was going to use. And that juxtaposition, reflecting on it, was crazy. On the one hand, talking about these Jewish heroes and the sacrifice and the incredible significance of an Israeli army on the one hand, and then waterproofing on the other hand, and all the annoying technical details that go into it. But I think for me, as a new Ole, here 3.5 years, so not so new, but still very much feel like I'm new at times, that experience underscored so much of what it means to be living in Israel. Those two worlds come together all the time. And I'll just, just to note a few things as I was thinking about this. So I, think about working on homework with my first grade daughter in the mamad. This was when Iran attacked, not in the middle of the night, but the second time when kids were still up. So that juxtaposition, we're doing homework, but we're in the mamad, at this incredible juncture in Jewish history. Buying my own home, I wish I met Lev earlier to be able to make the decision, to consider Carmei in the way that it should be. But sitting in front of a 500-page document of Hebrew text that would take me 5 lifetimes to read, and also being shocked that the Israeli language, Hebrew, has evolved to be this incredible language to be able to relate to all things that happen in modern society. Again, I was at a point in my Ulpan where maybe I was more sensitive to that. So I was inspired by that 500-page document. Okay, maybe not everyone. Turning on my sprinkler to make sure that everything can have water, the few plants that we have, trees that we have, and then davening for rain and realizing that rain is part of this dialogue with the Kadosh Baruch Hu when we live in Israel. That juxtaposition was just so meaningful and so much part of life in Israel. And I'll conclude with 2 points, which is when I think about Carmei Gat, what I've come to learn, and really through my time with Lev and going there a number of times, is that on the one hand, Carmei Gat is a modern city. It is a modern Israeli city. Lev will talk, and we'll talk, over the course of the evening about some of the details, but stores and eateries and parks and wide streets that are organized nicely and clearly and easy to get through, and parking spaces and brand new, beautiful buildings with all the trappings that brand new buildings have on the one hand. So the mundane, so to speak, is so comfortable and accessible and pleasant on the one hand. And on the other hand, Carmei Gat is in the south. Now it's in the far northern part of the south, in a safe, wonderful corner, but it is part of this area of Israel that has been challenged tremendously. Sderot and the Otef, on the one hand, far removed from Carmei Gat. On the other hand, my sense is that as a modern city, places that are rebuilding in the south look to Carmei Gat and say, oh, we have the support of Anglos. We have world Jewry connecting to us and part of our general area in Israel. It's inspiring and it's meaningful and it's really special. And I'll just, in terms of this point, but I have a nephew whose name is Eshel. Not a common name. At the bris, I was kind of taken aback. Don't know many Eshels. And my sister explained that her husband was a soldier and was gone for almost her entire pregnancy, except for a day here, a day there. Eshel is a tree in the south, and they wanted their child to be symbolic of the rebirth of the south. I think nothing highlights this, this more. And again, the actual cities that were and Moshavim that were destroyed. But Carmei Gat is just a beautiful flourishing of the south, and again, a real model of the support of Chutz La'aretz and a growing Anglo community. And I'll end with some praise for Lev, which is that Israel 360, IL 360, is here to deal with the mundane, here to help you with the process of buying a house and all the challenges that come up. Again, it's buying a house. That's the reality. To enable you to live the dream, to feel like the ideals that have brought you here to this webinar are real and significant and can still be relevant even while dealing with the more mundane details. And what I have been attracted to IL 360 and Lev is that he is willing to guide you on buying a house But when we've met with people who have said straight, I'm not interested in buying a house, but I have the following 15 questions about Israel. He sat with them and been involved with them through that process and given them the guidance, again, with IL 360's mission to help support Aliyah, in addition, obviously, to connecting people to their home in Israel. So that juxtaposition is going to happen this evening. In other words, the mundane, the technical, the details, but hopefully very much in a way that allows you to be able to be focused on some of the bigger themes and ideals. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Lev and the team and be involved, and really so excited to be part of this. Hatzlacha to everybody.
Thank you, Yair. Amazing introduction. And now we'll dive in. So we're going to speak about, we're going to dive into Carmei Gat, and right after we're going to speak about Carmei Gat, we have Josh Portman, a very diligent lawyer, a good friend of mine, who's going to hop in and give us some tips of buying in Israel from the legal perspective. So let's hop right into Carmei Gat. So I like starting with this slide because this slide basically it gives a little bit of the bullet points that we're going to focus on, and we're going to take all these 5 points and we'll try to speak about all of them. Obviously, there is a chat box if anyone has questions throughout the webinar. For me, for Yair, for Josh, we're all here to answer those questions as well. So let's hop right in. So Carmei Gat, what makes Carmei Gat so special? So we're going to speak about the location, the excellent connectivity, employment opportunities, community, the neighborhood, how gorgeous the neighborhood is, and the affordable housing. So before we dive in, we're going to see where Carmei Gat is. So Kiryat Gat is right down here. Then you have Tel Aviv, Modi'in, Jerusalem, Bet Shemesh, Route 6. Route 6 is the road that crosses Israel from north to south. And Carmei Gat, Kiryat Gat is right next door. And then there is a train that goes directly from Kiryat Gat to Tel Aviv. So that shows a little bit of the connectivity. If we focus on the actual city of Kiryat Gat, so Kiryat Gat is a city that's been around for decades, which is amazing because Carmei Gat is, I like saying that it's 85 to 90% there in terms of it's basically all completed, and what you see is what you get, and it's amazing. But even what you don't have in Carmei Gat, you have in Kiryat Gat, because Kiryat Gat has been a city for so many decades. So it's been around for so many decades. So they have anything from a courthouse to tire repair place to a furniture store and to anything you'll need, from clothing to the biggest shopping areas and everything. It's all in this place, so it's very convenient. So if you look at the greater city of Kiryat Gat, this triangle is the new neighborhood of Carmei Gat. So below Route 35 is Kiryat Gat, above Route 35 is Carmei Gat. If you see this red circle here is the current train station that goes to Tel Aviv. There's a 38-minute train to Tel Aviv during peak hours, and they're building a new train station that's going to be a walk. Right now, it's a 10-minute 10-minute bus ride to the train station, or a 4-minute car ride. I know also a lot of people that go on electric bikes or scooters or things like that, because it's basically just going straight down this road. But they're also going to build a new train station that's going to be about 5 to 7 minutes away from this development that we're speaking about today, which will be about 33 minutes away to Tel Aviv. So basically door to door under 40 minutes, which is amazing. And you also have Intel. Intel is one of the largest employers in Israel. I think aside of the government, they're the largest employer in Israel, and they have a manufacturing facility, crazy big manufacturing facility. You could just see that it's basically the size of Carmei Gat. It's incredible. And it's crazy how much they're developing, and they're just building more and more to it. But Intel is right there, and there are a lot of other factories. There's one of the largest steel factories is here, and a bunch of other factories are in this area. So there's definitely other high-tech companies. So definitely work-wise, you could hop on a train and get to Tel Aviv, or you could find a job at Intel or in one of the factories here. So it's really incredible what's going on. You also could see that Highway 6 is, we spoke about it earlier, Highway 6 is literally a 3-minute drive to the project. Yes, I think we spoke about all of this. Then you zoom in to the actual Carmei neighborhood, the park really jumps out of the picture here, but we'll see it in a second. This is where our development is. It's right here in the middle. The neighborhood is beautifully developed. The landscaping is gorgeous. It's clean. It's really, really nice. There's quality education, so there are a bunch of options for a bunch of schooling options in Carmei and Kiryat Gat. There's an amazing Anglo community that is already there. There are about 250 to 300 Anglo families that are currently there already in Carmei, and I personally know of at least another 100 families on the way, and there are probably more. Carmei is definitely developing their Anglo community. I was in Carmei today with some clients, and literally every place we went, there were more Anglos, and I'm like, okay, this is already significant. There's the Anglo community is in the process of building their new show. They just finished a fundraising campaign. They are they're finishing their planning stage and their permits, so they're moving forward very nicely. I'll point it out where it is in a second. It's right in this box as well. Big is a shopping chain of shopping malls in Israel that they're called Big. There's Big Fashion, Big Center, and there are a bunch of strip malls and indoor malls, and they basically built a gorgeous mall right over here. It's literally a 2-3 minute walk from the project, which is very, very cool. Coffee shops, clothing, what is it called? Pharmacies, anything you'll really need is all in that mall. There is also a very big supermarket, Rami Levi, if you've heard of it, is also in that mall in the basement. Up here in this half a circle, there are a bunch of other takeout stores. The best shawarma I know, the best falafel I know is here. It's really, really a lot of fun. Also, along this whole main drag, there are a bunch of parks. And then we're also actually in the middle of creating like some sort of video about the whole area. I'll try to send it out once it's done. But we're right in the middle of everything. As you can see, it's right in the middle of the neighborhood. So before I continue and I focus on this square, so just remember the square with these 2 traffic circles. But before I continue, I just want to show you the park. The park is really, really incredible. This is real footage of the park that we took. As you can see here, there's literally track for running track. There's a full soccer field, 2 tennis courts, beach volleyball with actual sand that was there about 3 months ago. And they were bringing new sand from the beach, which is very, very cool. They have mini pitches, which are basically small mini courts. They have 6 of them. They have, it's like 3-on-3 basketball or soccer. They have 2 basketball courts over here. They have indoor, outdoor rock climbing. Josh, maybe we should like go to Carmei and do some freestyle rock climbing. What do you think, Josh?
I think it's a great idea.
Let's do it. And there's a ropes course right over here as well. So everything is free and is open until from about 7 to 11 p.m. from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And the ropes course, and aside for the ropes course and rock climbing, that there you could get a membership or things like that, which is very cool. There is another mall right over here. There is Kids Park right over here, and this is the mall that I said that's already finished. We'll see it from a different angle in a second. I really like showing this video because this video this video really shows how much the city of Kiryat Gat has been investing in Carmei Gat. Carmei Gat has been like their pride and joy and the most significant project that they've done. And it's really turning out to be a beautiful place. So this is the mall that's already built. Hopefully we're going to get some new pictures soon. And this piece of land right over here is where the project is going to be. So it's about 10-minute walk from, maybe even less, from this great park. And it's about 2 minutes. It's right across the street from the mall. So it's really an incredible thing. I'll let it play out for another minute just because it's so cool, and then we'll head on to the next more practical slides. They have public bathrooms that are cleaned around the clock, which is very rare in Israel, and it's really beautiful. Okay, so if we focus on this square, this is where I pointed out earlier the 2 traffic circles. So this is the square right in the middle of the neighborhood, and we're building 6 buildings over here. I'll show it to you in a second, and 22 semi-attached homes. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I just want to point out that right over here is where the Anglo community or Carmei Tzion community got their piece of land. Let's continue. So there are 6 buildings. 4 buildings are 8 stories, and 2 buildings are 23 stories. In front of the buildings, there's like a strip park on the main drag, and these are the semi-attached villas. So there are 22 of these. I'll just give a quick brief about the villas. That way you could get an idea, but if you'd like some more information, you could reach me privately. Reach out privately and I'll give you all the information. So there are 5 bedrooms, 2,200 square feet, has a beautiful garden, has a very large rooftop, and it also has an option to add a pool. Some of them also come with basements. This area right over here is the living room, and this area is actually double ceiling. You see the glass up here, so this is double ceiling, which is very, very nice. If we go, this is like a classic 4-bedroom apartment. So the apartment size is 1,367 square feet. It's very nice and big. So you walk in, you have your living room, dining room, kitchen. There's a storage room of 130 square feet. Right over, sorry, there's a storage room of 96 square feet and a porch of 130 square feet right over here. So this storage room is not included in the space of the apartment, but it's a very large room that could obviously be used as storage. Some people would use it as an office. It does have lower ceilings, but it's very practical. So you continue and you have 4 bedrooms. So this is the first one. It's a master bedroom with a niche for a closet and an ensuite bathroom. Then you have your second bedroom, a third bedroom, the 4th bedroom, that's the mamad. In between these 2 bedrooms, there's the main bathroom with a bathtub and a niche for a laundry machine, a washing machine, and you also have a powder room. So there are 2.5 bathrooms, 4 nice-sized bedrooms, a storage room, and a porch. Every apartment also comes with a parking spot as well. So this is like the example of a 4-bedroom. So we'll also go and I'll show you the idea of the prices. So the prices for the 2 bedrooms, we didn't see the 2 bedrooms or the 3 bedrooms, but just to get the idea of the prices are 560,000 and up for the 2 bedrooms. Starting prices for the 3 bedrooms are $610,000. Starting prices for 4 bedrooms are $670,000. And the amazing thing is that you could pay 20% upon signing. Then there's a process you could go through with that's called a builder's loan, and then you could pay the rest upon completion date. The estimated completion, it really depends on the buildings, but anywhere between 3 to 4 years. So if we circle back and we go look at what makes Carmei Gat a great place to buy. So we spoke about the location, if it's because of the train, because of Intel, because of that. So there is amazing connectivity, and there are employment opportunities. We spoke about the community, the Anglo community that's here already. We spoke about how beautiful the neighborhood is, and the apartments are relatively very affordable. So on that note, if I'd like to introduce my good friend, lawyer Josh Portman. He's an amazing lawyer who takes very, very good care of his clients. It's been a great pleasure working with you, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Josh? We can't
Oh,
hear
here we
you.
go. I just unmuted myself. Sorry about that. I hit the button by
No
accident.
problem.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
First of all, I apologize for doing this from my car, but I had to be Menachem Avil to two different families outside of Yerushalayim, and I knew I wasn't going to make it back on time, so I preferred just sitting in my car and not driving back and doing this while I'm driving. So apologies in advance for the locale, but I hope you can see me well and hear me well. No, so first of all, just let me just about myself. I've been living in Israel for 35 years approximately. I made Aliyah literally right after I finished law school. I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, undergrad, and also law school. And then I came to Israel, planning on being here for a short period of time, but ended up staying. And I've been practicing law in Israel for close to 30 years. And I've been basically doing something that I love. I got into real estate by working for an Anglo attorney who represented me when I bought my first apartment. And I just fell in love with the idea of representing people and helping people move to Israel or just get a piece of Israel. So I think that, I look at my role as also as a shaliach to help people make aliyah, but also beyond that, also to streamline the process and help people understand the process, because certainly buying an apartment, buying a house in the United States or wherever people are located is probably one of the biggest investments they'll ever make in their life. And, the process can be scary and somewhat daunting. So I would say that, I think the most important thing is for a potential buyer is to have good people that they're working with and understand the process. Because I think if you embrace the process, it's not as scary as it actually appears to be. So, oftentimes people ask the question, how can I, how can I buy a property if I'm 6,000 miles away? The answer is you hire a good lawyer who can represent your interest, and everything from a practical or technical standpoint. A buyer gives his attorney a power of attorney, and he can sign the contract on behalf of the buyer. If the buyer is already located in Israel, obviously they can sign the contract themselves. The other question people ask is, well, how can I possibly understand a 40 or 50-page contract? They say, don't they have this in English? The answer is no. What I do at least is I provide a client with a very detailed summary or synopsis of the salient terms of the contract, which makes the process much easier. They'll understand exactly what they're getting into, and they'll be able to really understand the process, and it's much less scary. So let me just point out, since we're dealing with a project on paper, that's what I'm really going to concentrate on in terms of buying. And I think that the fundamental difference between Israel and other, Western countries is that once the contract is signed in Israel, even if you're going to get the apartment, 2 or 3 years or 4 years down the road, the closing in Israel is when you actually sign the purchase contract. So therefore, all due diligence is done prior to contract, whether it's, determining whether you can qualify for a mortgage, understanding what the product is that you're getting, where you might have to upgrade. Just some examples, in a typical contract, when you buy on paper, I would say that the majority of the lion's share of people are going to upgrade the kitchen, which is, I think, the place where most Jewish people spend most of their time, other than the bedroom, sleeping. But so I would say that that's something that's very important. And also in Israel, unlike in outside of Israel, apartments don't come with closets in the bedrooms. There are typically not shower enclosures, things that people are accustomed to. They're not typically also not hi-hat lighting in an apartment. So these are things just people have to get, accustomed to and understand that they'll need to, add these things at the end of the process or during the process. The other question, the other thing, which is I think is very different from Israel than outside of Israel, is the closing costs associated with purchasing a property. Lev, are you going to touch on that, or do you want me to touch on that? I just
If you could speak about it shortly.
okay. So the biggest
By the way,
expense.
what we do is before someone comes to close and when people are trying to understand the process, we have a very clear Excel sheet that shows all the different costs. But if you could touch those different costs, that would be great.
Yes, so there's certainly a difference between if you're planning on moving to Israel full time and if this is your sole apartment, and there's certain time frames of making Aliyah and moving to Israel in order to benefit from certain benefits, tax benefits. I'm talking about the biggest expense, really, other than the purchase price itself associated with the purchase, is the acquisition tax, or what we call mas rechisha. And the mas rechisha for a foreigner starts at 8%. But if you qualify as an Oleh Hadash, there were some improvements to the law recently as a new immigrant, that up to 2 million shekels, you're exempt from tax, and everything up until 6 million shekels, you're only paying 0.5%. The caveat is that you actually have to live in Israel full time, and that has to be your primary residence. But there's other benefits, certain benefits if you become a resident within a certain framework of time. But in general, as a foreigner, if you're not planning on moving to Israel immediately, within the certain time frames, purchase tax is 8% up to approximately 6 million shekels. Then it's 10% for every shekel above that. So it's just something that you have to be aware of. That's one of the most the biggest costs outside of the purchase price, and then you have the legal fees and the brokerage commission.
What's the time frame? If someone makes Aliyah, then how much time after signing a contract do they get that
Okay.
foreigner tax?
Okay, so I can tell you that the law changed recently. So what they say is like this: if you buy the general rule is if you buy a second-hand apartment within 12 months of signing the purchase contract, you have to become an Oleh Hadash and live here full time. It's they really check to see if the center of life is in Israel. That if you buy on paper, you have to have what is called an ashrat oleh within 1 year of purchase, but you don't actually have to formally make aliyah until completion, but no more than 3 years from contract. So you have up to 3 years from the signing of the contract, provided, however, that if the apartment would be completed in a year and a half, you would have to been a full-time oleh within a year and a half. There is something which I'm still checking into, and I don't know, because it was in August the law was modified, that they say you have to have an ashrat oleh within 12 years, which means a confirmation of aliyah, which doesn't mean you actually have to become an oleh, but you have to have a certification that you're entitled, you could be an oleh. And I don't even know what that document is. I've never heard of it before. So it's something I've tried to find out from Nefesh B'Nefesh and various sources. I'm still looking into it, and I'm trying to get an answer from the tax office. Once I have an answer, I will let everyone know. But the general rule of thumb, though, as to benefit from the OLED discount, you have a bit more
But
time
it's
when you
not
buy on
simple
paper.
it's not simple to call the tax office and just ask them a question.
Yeah, if you can,
I'm
you
just
can,
kidding.
yeah. Hello. They, מערכת לניתוב שיחות, כמו שאומרים. It's like they give you, they bump you from one place to another. So let's just go back to the idea of buying on paper. So first of all, we know that it's not an issue buying if you're living abroad, because you can give your attorney a power of attorney and he can sign on your behalf. That also, in terms of mortgages, I'm not going to go into great detail on the mortgages, but just you should know, as a foreign resident, as a general rule of thumb, you're entitled to 50% financing. If you're buying an apartment for 2 million shekels, if you qualify from a financial perspective, you can get a loan of 1 million shekels. The loan, the mortgage loans in Israel can only be paid to the developer. They do not cover the soft costs. And the one thing which is anomalous to Israel is the soft costs are paid up front. So I didn't get in. There's two other, I would say the bigger, closing costs, which are, or maybe three, I guess, if you talk about the mortgage broker. But the two other main costs is the real estate agent's commission, which is typically 2% plus VAT, and the lawyer legal fees when foreign residents are buying is typically, the norm is approximately 1% plus VAT. And that can vary a bit also, but in general, but people representing foreign residents charge typically approximately 1% plus VAT. VAT is currently 18% in Israel. So if you have a fee of 10,000 shekels, it means you have to add another 1,800 shekels on for VAT. So it would be 11,800 shekels if that was the fee, and whether it's a legal fee or a brokerage commission. So as a foreigner, as a general rule of thumb, if you're buying an apartment between 2, 3, 4 million shekels, closing costs with a mortgage and everything else associated is approximately, say, 12 to 13% of the total cost of the purchase. And if you become a new immigrant, then obviously that goes down significantly because the purchase tax is very negligible if you qualify as an Israeli resident within the timeframes allotted. So that's as far as the closing costs. And the closing
It could
costs
go down to like about it could go down by 8%, so about 5%.
Exactly. And so that's as far as the upfront costs. And in Israel, because the closing is when you sign the contract, the closing costs are paid when you sign the contract. So that's something a person has to bear in mind, that when they're putting down, budgeting themselves for a transaction, they need to take into consideration that in addition to whatever down payment they're going to have to pay on the property, they're going to have to come up with another 12 to 13% as a foreigner, and say 5 or 6% as Israeli. There are purchase tax is due within 60 days of contract. However, you can defer it with interest and linked to the CPI as long as you haven't put in more than 50% of the purchase price. But these are technical details which, if anyone has any questions, certainly I'm more than happy to field those questions. What it takes to qualify for the lower rates, et cetera, and how to defer things. So that's just in a nutshell the closing costs and some of the anomalies of buying in Israel. So just in general, before one goes to contract, they just have to make sure that they've done all their due diligence and they understand that when they sign the contract, there's no such thing as a due diligence period. They're in, and that's it. Once you sign the contract, you're in, and if you don't follow the payment schedule or the terms of the contract, you're going to be in breach of contract. Now, let's talk about the idea of buying on paper. What are the advantages of buying on paper? There's one other anomalous thing on paper. Lev, are these deals linked to the building index?
Yes.
Okay,
They're
so
linked to
this
the
is
builder's index, and also if you could also speak a little bit about the bank guarantee and stuff like that.
that's what I'm going to do. So
Yeah.
first of all, there's something which is quite anomalous in Israel. Like when you buy a house in the States, you're if it's $500,000, it's $500,000. In Israel, the purchase price is linked to the Israeli construction index when you buy on paper in most transactions. I can't say it's in every transaction, but 99% of the transactions, when you buy on paper, the developers link the purchase price to the Israeli construction index. Now, one thing which a very important amendment to the law that came into place a year and a half ago was that the government recognized that the land costs represent a majority of the purchase price. So it was unfair that the developers would link the entire purchase price to the Israeli construction index. And as such, they amended the law that the first 20% of a purchase price is not linked at all to the building index, and the remaining 80% is only 50% linked to the increase in the building index. So even if there is crazy high inflation, it's mitigated to a certain extent by only being linked to, say, 40% of the increase of the building index on 80% of the 50% of the increase in the building index on 80% of the purchase price. So effectively speaking, only 40% of the purchase price is linked to the Israeli construction index. That's what it comes down to. The other way of also avoiding this is I always negotiate into contracts the right to prepay. So if you have the right to prepay, then you can technically mitigate the effects of the building index. If you see inflation is very high and your shekel payments are going up significantly, you can prepay. As far as and that obviously helps. One other thing that I want to point out is that clients often make the mistake, people that live in the UK or Australia or in the United States often make the mistake thinking in the currency that they actually are earning in. And that's something that I always tell clients, you have to think in shekels. I know it's more difficult because obviously it's not the currency earning, but there is, when you buy on paper over a long period of time, there is a currency risk. There's also a potential benefit because if you have a deal like what Lev's talking about, where you're paying only 20% when you sign, and they're 80% a couple of years down the road, you can watch the exchange rates and take advantage of them as they, if they do go up over the course of the coastal contract. But it's something you have to take into consideration because there are certain risks associated with buying in a currency that you're not earning in, and something to factor in. That don't think in dollars or pounds or Australian dollars or whatever rand or whatever country you're from, but think in shekels. Now, people often also ask the question, what happens if, God forbid, the developer goes belly up during the course of the construction process? So in Israel, law was first of all, in all the contracts before there's a permit. Let me go back a step. The developer, by law, has to guarantee the payments that the buyer makes in connection with the purchase of the apartment. So any payment that's made has to be guaranteed by a bank guarantee or an insurance policy. And before permits and before a financing arrangement is put in place, a developer cannot receive more than 7% of the purchase price. And in most projects, the 7% is put in escrow. So therefore, the buyer really has no exposure to the developer going belly up in that scenario. There are some such scenarios, like the VAT component of the purchase price is guaranteed by the government, and the purchase price itself before VAT is guaranteed by a commercial bank or a insurance company. The other thing is that the sales law in Israel provides long-term warranties for construction. There are warranties, a general warranty on all the construction of 1 year, and then there are longer-term warranties for pipes and plumbing and leaks, and for latent defects, it's like 20 years also. So it's like there's really no limitation. The other thing that I want to point out is that when a person buys on paper, there's an advantage that because you buy something before it's actually built, you also have the ability to make certain changes in the interior design, which you wouldn't have that opportunity if you're buying a secondhand apartment. And you're also getting state-of-the-art modern construction, so that everything is brand new. So that, coupled with the warranties, there are certain material advantages to buy on paper, and also that you don't have to come up with all the money in advance. That's also an advantage of buying on paper. These aren't really legal issues, but practical issues. And I think that as an attorney, I find that a lot of times the contracts are draconian, but my objective is, when I represent someone, is to familiarize them with the process, make them feel more comfortable with the process, and streamline the process so that they know exactly what to expect and there's no disappointment. Because I think the biggest disappointment and fear when a person buys an apartment in Israel, whether it's a secondhand transaction or first-hand transaction, is what they thought they were going to get, or expectations aren't met. And if a person knows what to expect, then at least it definitely has an impact on their disappointment if certain things happen during the process.
Okay, great. So if anyone has questions, you're welcome to bring it up in the chat box, and we would be glad to answer you. But before that, Yair, do you want to give us some closing words?
What's that?
Sure. First of all, hi, Josh.
Sorry.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Apropos what you said, it was just so funny. You reminded me, not funny, but how resilient we are as Israelis. I mean, I've been living in the country longer than I was in the States by many years. And I remember that my wife and I were in the middle of the highway when the Iranians bombarded Israel, the second wave. And it was quite a traumatic experience. But the funny thing is that, it's not funny, but it just shows how, living in Israel, we life goes on all the time. And I said to my wife, I said, what are we going to have for dinner after we were lying in a ditch on the side of the road for half hour? So it just reminds me like of how, how that symbiotic relationship between like, tragedies and simcha, whatever. So it's,
mundane and big picture. So yeah, it's nice
yes.
to meet you. And again, if it was just Lay's recommendation, I would think highly of you, but that was really very helpful. I guess one thing you mentioned, which is very important, I'll just quickly mention it and reiterate, but about the due diligence, it seems, it feels overwhelming from America to have to kind of do that before signing the contract. But there are many, as you said, many guarantees and many protections built in to working with new construction, both your money, but also the product, which again, you certainly can elaborate more when it moves to that for people, but that's certainly very, very valuable. All right, so it's getting late. I'll just end with the following idea, which I think will be a nice way to cap off all the stuff that Lev and Josh talked about, which is we never know where things end up in Israel. So I was listening to a podcast. I don't know if people are familiar. Dan Sinor, Call Me Back. I really enjoy it. So one of the episodes, he was interviewing a woman, Dana Schwartz, an author, and she just published a book called Ghosts of a Holy War, the 1929 massacre in Palestine that ignited the Arab-Israeli conflict. So she addresses an unfortunate, tragic, really horrible episode, the Hebron massacres in 1929, and she describes the events leading up to it, that Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was the Grand Mufti, a horrible anti-Semite, partnered with the Nazis. I believe his nephew was Arafat, so definitely some things in the genes there. Big anti-Semite, and he was provoking the Arabs there in Israel at the time, 1929, in the month before, claiming the Jews were gonna try to storm the Temple Mount. And on Tisha B'Av of 1929, so 10,000 Jews came to the Kotel to celebrate or to mourn the Beit HaMikdash on Tisha B'Av. And he used that as a pretext to say, oh, here's proof the Jews want to take the Temple Mount. We need to stop them. And that's what really was the final flame that ignited the spark that ignited the riots of 1929. And she notes in the book that in the days before the riots got to Hebron, the Haganah came to Hebron, and the leaders of Hebron said, "We want to protect you. Let us be stationed here. Let us protect you here in Hebron." And the Jews of Hebron said, "No, we're safe. We're good. We have good relationship with the neighbors. We don't need your protection." The Haganah said, "Fine." And they turned around and they left. And sure enough, tragically, a few days later, the riots did get to Hebron. And she describes in the book a lot of the horrible things we saw on October 7th happened there as well. Really gruesome and terrible pictures, in terms of the impact on the Jewish community there. A lot of destruction of property, et cetera. Really, really horrible. And I recall as I was listening, my thought before they finished the podcast was, oh, if only we had the IDF, if only we had the incredible soldiers that we've seen over the past year, they would have been able to respond to this mob with incredible professionalism, stop them in a moment's effort. I mean, just such talent, such professional soldiers we have. And the podcast continued, and they said that it was the events of 1929 that caused the Haganah to reimagine itself and to emerge as a national fighting force, an army, and eventually morph into the IDF. And all the talent, all the professionals that we have today was pushed. Not only, but one of the major factors was their shock and horror at not having forced themselves as the national army on Hebron to protect them. So here you have this horrible event, and genuinely horrible, not to whitewash it at all, the events of the Hebron massacre, August 24th, 1929. But what was able to emerge from it was the Haganah, the IDF, and the incredible army that we've seen really over the past year and a half, over the past 75 years. And as I think about October 7th and the horror that it unleashed, it is that. It was really a traumatic event and really scary, but it's not too difficult to point to amazing, powerful outgrowths that have emerged from that. And one of them certainly is the impact that the army and the incredible things that the soldiers and the army has been able to do. That's certainly number one, first and foremost. But I think the impact on world Jewry is certainly another one. And I don't know of the people that are here this evening. I can't see you. I haven't met all of you. Some I might know from my time in America. But the impact on world Jewry has been profound. For some, I don't belong here anymore. I'm making Aliyah. This is it. The final push. For some, your idealism and your commitment to Israel has always been there, and maybe this played a role or did not. But certainly in rethinking the world that we live in, the role that Israel plays in the world, the state of Israel, etc., it certainly has been changed radically since October 7th. And what I'll say is, just having lived in Teaneck, so I made Aliyah, like I said, 3.5 years ago, there was a rally, a pro-Palestinian rally, probably 2019, pre-corona, I don't remember exactly when, a Palestinian rally, and on Shabbos, and the advice of all the rabbis, and based on the officers, the police, working with the police, was to stay home, close your doors, don't go out, don't start a fuss. And that was what happened for the most part. A few people counter rallied, but it really was Jews staying home. And since the events of October 7th, the response has been very different in Teaneck, and I talk to friends, I'm still in touch, a more proactive, a stronger approach. People see their role there, some people, I can't speak for the entire community and for everyone, but as being a little different. We need to counteract, we need to consider Aliyah more strongly, we need to express more Jewish pride, but the impact of October 7th reverberates really throughout the entire world. And the fact that we're sitting here this evening, I don't know what brought you here, everyone, I'm sure it's different, but we never know how things end up. And the fact that you're here thinking about Aliyah and your time in Israel is inspiring, is amazing. I met Josh for the first time here, an amazing and impressive professional. Lev, I've known for a number of months. We want to help you with this process. We want it to be smooth. We want you to feel comfortable. And Mirz Hashem, you never know where things go. Hopefully this webinar will lead to great places, to finding your home in Israel, and we'll get to spend many more hours and years together in Israel. So thank you very much for coming.
Okay, so I'll just answer a few questions that were asked here. So first of all, we will send a follow-up email with a recording of this webinar. And someone asked, how easy is it to get to Jerusalem by public transportation? So there are a lot of buses throughout the day to Jerusalem. It takes approximately an hour. If it's off-peak, it could even take less. And some people asked about the prices of single units, please. So I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about, but we have the prices up here of the apartments and of the semi-attached homes. You could just text me and I will send you the whole rundown.
There was, Lev, there was one other question which I answered, but I'll just say it. Person asked the question, you had said that the agreement is signed on closing, but what is actually signed on the decision to purchase? As well, I assume the closing costs are all paid at decision to purchase, not closing, correct? So the answer to that question is as follows. When a person buys an apartment in a project like Carmei got, there's first you sign a letter of intent, which is your intent to purchase, and that details the basics of the transaction, the price of the unit, payment schedule, and what you're getting. And at that point in time, there's typically a small deposit given, or like people from abroad often just show a check or something. Lev, you can explain that. But the closing costs are only due after you actually go to contract. So if you sign a registration form and don't go to contract, that's not that doesn't trigger anything. What triggers the closing costs is the actual signing of the purchase contract, and that's the closing of the deal, not the letter of intent. So it's not a decision to close. It's the actual closing is when you sign the purchase contract in Israel, even if it's 3 or 4 years before you get the apartment. That's what triggers all the costs, all the closing costs.
Right. The letter of intent is basically just to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of the price, in terms of the actual unit, and to get your lawyer the contracts. That way he could go over it. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yair. Thank you so much, Josh. This was a beautiful webinar, and everyone you're all welcome to reach out privately, and we'll be able. We're actually, me and Yair are actually going to be in the U.S. and in Canada